Sunday, June 18th, 1815. 10 miles south of Brussels, in a shallow valley which sits below the Mont Saint-Jean escarpment, recently restored Emperor of France Napoleon Bonaparte leads his French Army du Nord northwards towards the Belgian capital. In his way is the Duke of Wellington's British-led Allied army. Napoleon, who has recently been deposed the year previously after 10 years as Emperor of the French, is now back in power after a year in exile. In response to his restoration, the combined nations of Great Britain, Prussia, Austria and Russia raise armies to defeat the man who at one time held control of the European mainland. Napoleon leads his army into Belgium to confront Wellington and his ally, General Field Marshal Gerhard Blucher and his Prussian army. His mission is to destroy their armies one at a time, so that he can turn his limited army onto the Russians and Austrians before they can reach French borders. After two indecisive battles, Wellington has chosen his ground just south of the town of Waterloo, hoping for the Prussians to reinforce him from the east. Napoleon must break Wellington's line before the Prussians arrive. Otherwise, he will be heavily outnumbered and his chance of victory will be slim. The future of Europe hangs in the balance, and over the next 11 hours, his fate will be decided. Wellington's forces are a mix of British, Nassau, Brunswick, Hanover, Dutch and Belgian soldiers. Wellington considers his men as the scum of the earth, but ensures to make fine fellows of them all. The British are fervently loyal to him, but the same cannot be said of those from the smaller duchies who have previously fought for Napoleon. Wellington settles for the ridge of the Mont Saint-Jean, which provides a strategic vantage point overlooking the shallow valley. Wellington decides to place a majority of his infantry beyond the escarpment in order to provide cover from enemy cannon fire, whilst his second command, the Lord of Uxbridge and his cavalry corps, remains in the rear to repulse any enemy attack. To Wellington's right is his first corps under the command of the Prince of Orange of the Netherlands, and on his left, the temperamental Sir Thomas Picton commands the 5th Division. Forward of Wellington's main position stands 3 farmhouses which are garrisoned with elite troops: Papelette on the left, La Haye Sainte at his centre, and Hougoumont on the right. In addition, across the Brussels-Charleroi road from La Haye Sainte, a sandpit provides useful cover for the elite 95th Rifle skirmishers that can harass any approach to the ridge above. Wellington knows that despite his entrenched position, his army is outnumbered, less experienced and outgunned. He has no choice but to wait and hope for the Prussian arrival. Napoleon's army is not the army it once was. His men, although loyal and experienced, are aging, and the once abundancy of skilled officers that were available to him have become depleted due to 2 decades of war. Faced with Wellington's defence, Napoleon would have to take the fortified farmsteads before he could sally against the main line. In addition, Napoleon, concerned about the Prussians, has divided his army previous to the battle, and sent 30,000 soldiers under the command of the Marquis de Grouchy to pursue Blucher and drive him away from Wellington. Due to heavy rain from the previous night, the French heavy artillery is unable to be in position until 11 o'clock in the morning, severely delaying Napoleon's plans. When they are finally in position, the Grand Battery, as the mass artillery was referred to, are positioned in force on Napoleon's right, supporting 1st Corps under General Jean-Baptiste Delon. On his left is 2nd Corps under the command of General Honoré René. Whilst in the centre around La Baie-Alliance comprises the famed Imperial Guard. The French cavalry awaits on each flank to the rear of the infantry. At 11:30 am, the French artillery fires upon Hougoumont on Wellington's right. In response, the British artillery returns fire on French positions. General Reille is ordered to attack the farmhouse with his corps, comprising the majority of the French left. French skirmishers are first to make battle, encountering Hanoverian and Nassauer skirmishers in the woods that rest before the farmhouse. Following fierce close-quarter fighting lasting an hour, the Allied soldiers fall back into the farmhouse building, allowing the French to take the woods at a bloody cost. The farmhouse, defended by elements of the 1st and 2nd Foot Guards, use self-made loopholes in the farm's perimeter wall, ensuring that a continuous rate of fire rains down upon the attackers. After several unsuccessful attempts to break entry into the farm, the French retreat to the tree line, but a brigade is able to attack the farm from the west. However, they are exposed from Allied fire from the ridge above, which inflicts heavy casualties upon them. Despite this, at least 50 French soldiers manage to gain entry into the farmhouse courtyard, but they are outnumbered and overwhelmed, forcing the rest of the brigade to withdraw. Aille's failure to take the farm ensures that it will remain to be a thorn in the side of any French force attacking the ridge. In addition, the corps in Napoleon's left flank is either dead, wounded, missing, or exhausted, meaning they will play little part in the rest of the battle. At 1 PM, Napoleon observes the troops in the distance marching towards their position. However, any hopes that his Grouchy returned to assist him in the battle quickly evaporates as it soon becomes clear that they are actually Prussians marching to Wellington's aid. In light of this situation, the Emperor orders Delon and his 20,000 men to advance with the objective to break through to Brussels. The advance manages to push back the 95th Skirmisher Rifles from the sandpit and overwhelms the La Haye-Saint farmstead in the centre. Upon reaching the top of the ridge, General Picton is ordered to repel their advance and is killed leading his men in a vicious melee. In response, Uxbridge directs his cavalry to support Picton's infantry, including the renowned Scots Greys. The French infantry breaks and retreats. However, the British cavalry, buoyed by the success, continue onwards towards the French lines. Some British units successfully reach the French guns, but a counter-cavalry charge is ordered by the French cuirassiers and lancers, catching the British unawares, resulting in their almost complete destruction. Time was now against the Emperor. His second-in-command, the heroic Marshal Michel Ney, believing that Wellington had ordered a general retreat, personally leads a mass cavalry charge of 8,000 horses to right the Allies. As the French cavalry bear down upon the Allied lines, the order is given for the infantry to form squares to repel the charge. After 2 hours of fierce fighting between the two adversaries, and despite the chaos the cavalry has caused the Allied lines, the French sustain heavy casualties and are ordered to retreat. By this time, the Prussians reach the French right flank and are attacking through the village of Plassenoir. To counter this, Napoleon orders the Young Guard elites to hold this flank despite being outnumbered over 3-1. The Prussian army consists mainly of landowning inexperienced officers and large numbers of conscripted landwehr, and are no match for the crack French troops. Within 30 minutes, the Prussians are retreating from the village. By 7:30, however, it has been retaken by scores of Prussians after brutal house-to-house combat, leaving the French hopelessly outnumbered and on the verge of collapse. With the fall of La Haye-Saint, Wellington's centre is now dangerously exposed to musket and cannon fire from the farmhouse. Therefore, he seeks to reinforce it with soldiers from each of his flanks. Napoleon knows that if he can break Wellington's centre now, he could then turn his attention to rebuff the Prussians, giving him an opportunity to turn the tide of the battle in his favour. He makes the decision to commit his Imperial Guard, the most veteran and elite of all his units. Honour and glory is a sight to behold, as the men he has fought with from the very beginning leads an advance to deliver victory once and for all. However, upon reaching the ridge, the reinforced Allied centre fires volley after volley into the Old Guard. Witnessing the Imperial Guard suffer heavy casualties and on the verge of routing for the first time in its history, Wellington orders a general advance. Simultaneously, the Prussians finally break through on the French right. The French army is now almost completely surrounded and in disarray. Napoleon, with no other option available to him, flees the battlefield. By 10 PM, the fighting had ceased. The French had either been cut down in their retreat, surrendered, or routed from the field. As many as 45,000 men lay dead or wounded on the small valley field at the battle's end, half of which are French. The sight of such death and destruction led Wellington to remark later, "Next to a battle lost, the greatest misery is a battle gained." Napoleon, defeated, flees to Paris and then onwards towards America, but is intercepted by the Royal Navy and forced into exile once more, this time for good on the isolated island of St. Helena in the Atlantic Ocean, where he would die 6 years later. With the French Empire defeated, along with any vestiges of the French Revolution, the status quo in Europe would prevail, and it would be nearly 100 years until the continent would again be plunged into total war.